I'm not gonna lie, when the rumors were going around about the movie coming out, I didn't really care all that much because I think that Avatar has kind of ran its course. But I'm sure that it's when I saw the like if I had saw trailers and if this movie was released properly, I would have probably went to go see it in theaters anyways. However, Paramount kind of got hacked, and then the whole entire movie, kind of got leaked on X. So the movie has been kind of getting copyright struck by like every upload on X ever since. And since everyone has been kind of like seeing it and stuff, I kind of decided, why not watch it for myself when I had the chance. And I gotta say, like after seeing the full movie and everything, it was pretty good. I mean, and it could still be good in theaters and stuff, in my opinion. What I would kind of do is just add some deleted scenes and kind of, a few more cameos from certain characters, like possibly Hakoda, Suki, or maybe Iroh. That's my idea of how like I would kind of contrast that leak to kind of get people to go see it in theaters at that point. But the reason why I wasn't really like enthusiastic about it was because a lot of the stuff outside of like Avatar: The Last Airbender isn't really well received by fans all that much. Like Legends of Korra constantly being a punching bag by the fan base. The live action movie was pretty bad. The live action show was kind of underwhelming. The comics were kind of a hit or a miss. And then the games were just straight up terrible, except for the Legends of Korra game that I had talked about. And I haven't really heard too much about the fighting game that was supposed to be coming out, so who knows what that's going to be like. So I wasn't really sure if this wasn't going to like really move the needle forward with this movie. Maybe if we weren't really saturated with all this, then for like the last 20 years, then there probably would have been more hype behind this movie. And of course, you have a new powerful villain Team Avatar is facing, so inevitably you have people trying to bash Korra again by comparing him to Zahir, since they're both evil airbenders that fought the main hero, the Avatar. The new villain Taga does have better feats and training than Zahir, but Zahir was always more of a psychological threat and had a lot more potential to kind of be the best if he actually had more formal training. That's just my personal opinion though. But yeah, he was more of a psychological threat for Korra. And of course, he can get down to he's physical and whatnot, but what a lot of people are probably forgetting if they're trying to like use this to try and be like, oh, well, Korra sucked, and stuff because she struggled with Zahir. Mainly season 3 of Legends of Korra, the main villains was Zahir and the Red Lotus. So, Guzan, the Lava Bender, Pali, the Combustion Bender, and Ming Hua, the Water Bender that can bend without like her arms and stuff. Yeah, those were the main villains, okay? That Korra had to kind of face, and they all kind of sort of faced her when she went into the Avatar state later on, which she was poisoned and whatnot. Zahir cannot take Korra in the Avatar state, and during that whole fight, he was pretty much running away to try and wear her down so that she can, to allow the poison to kick in and whatnot to kind of kill her and all that. So, yeah, because even without the Avatar state, I still think Korra could actually beat Zahir, and it kind of does show a little bit, but it is what it is with that. That being the difference between a movie villain and a seasonal one, because let this be Zhao, Azula, Zuko, Kavira, and Amon, who were never really a match for like the Avatar stage either. But I gotta say though, for a standard bender, that this guy was actually retardedly strong, even surpassing Aang, who was trained by like the best airbender of all time and stuff. Even like this guy was like even better than Aang in airbending, which is crazy, because Meng Gyatso used to be considered to be the best airbender of all time. And then Aang being his student and everything, and being like the youngest person at the time to become like an airbending master and stuff, you would think that eventually Aang would like grow, surpass his master, and he would be the best airbender. But no, that definitely goes to this guy, in my personal opinion. No Avatar powers or none of that stuff, and he was kind of even on par with Aang, like who's like in his 20s now, who's a young adult, who has like mastered all 4 elements and stuff. So that's pretty crazy, if like when you think about it. Then his abilities kind of like, are definitely boosted and stuff when he's like using this like ancient artifact staff that kind of channels the power of the spirit world. So he might actually be the strongest like Avatar villain that we've seen, like right after like, Unavatu. And for those who are kind of new to my channel, yes, I like both Avatar: Last Airbender and Legends of Korra. So I'm not really a fan of when either series gets like slandered. So some of it's kind of like a little bit over nostalgia, and some of it's over people that are just being defensive about something that they like, but are kind of forgetting the foundation of what made it what it was that very day. But it is what it is. So I'm not the type of guy that kind of claim that, oh, it's sexist and I like Korra, or homophobic or whatever, or claim that, oh, well, Aang's a bad dad, or Aang sucks as a character for whatever reason, or try to throw that in the face of like, oh, well, Aang he let his people die and he made mistakes and all that. Like, I'm not the type of guy to do all that. Which he wasn't a terrible dad, by the way. But I'm kind of, getting off track here. So let me get back on track. So this is kind of set around like relatively in their 20s, maybe like 5 or 10 years before everybody kind of like started having children. It's kind of good to see like Sokka alive and stuff, but he's kind of like an inventor in the Southern Water Tribe now. So he's not yet Republic City's like councilman or the chief of the Southern Water Tribe just yet, which all that stuff comes later on when he's like in his 40s and in his elderly years. Toph is still the Sifu, teaching like earth and metal bending at her school, so she's not yet like the chief of police or anything, like they were established inside Republic City. Zuko, of course, is still the active Fire Lord, and Katara is an inspirational figure in Republic City. I don't know what she was doing at the beginning of the movie, but she was giving a speech about Aang and all this other stuff. So she has some kind of like thing. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, Aang and Katara, they also live together now, but I'll kind of assume that they're possibly married at this point. Aang travels around the world looking for like airbender relics and uncharted temples, and so he kind of has an encounter with like a non-bending faction called the Divided. They kind of attack Aang and like resenting him for like his power and status and his past mistake that kind of resulted in the 100-year war. Aang tries to talk them down and even saves one of their ranks' lives. They manage to kind of get away, and they're kind of after the so-called Staff of Sonma, a weapon that can channel the power of the spirit world and give people power thanks to the Lion Turtles' hand in creating it. Sona used to be the previous Avatar as well. Aang reassembles Team Avatar, which consists of Katara, Toph, Sokka, and Zuko, to kind of find the weapon and kind of stop the divide. In their travels, they managed to discover an ancient airbender frozen just like Aang, but even longer, for like 5,000 years, named Taga. Taga came from an era where the Earth Nation killed some of his people, and he was an apprentice of Sona. Taga assists Team Avatar at finding it since he kind of knows the location of it. So he kind of bonds with Aang a lot, even kind of teaching him some ancient airbending techniques that he's actually never learned before. But Katara kind of grows a little suspicious, especially when he almost like kind of tried to kill some of the Divide members when they got attacked by them. And he kind of tried to like convince Aang to almost like sort of abandon his team when they kind of like needed his help on something. So, which obviously she's kind of proven right later after he kind of betrays them and almost kind of kills everybody for the staff. And he kind of wanted to change the world with Aang, but obviously Aang kind of rejected the idea. Katara kind of saves everybody with the spirit water that was like in the area and stuff, since everybody was fatally wounded after fighting Taga. So they kind of go after Taga, who like teamed up with the Divide and kind of turned them into his like personal army of benders thanks to the staff. So they kind of take them like to like Republic City, where Taga kind of reaches like a monstrous looking form. Long story short, Aang gets the staff away from Taga, nearly uses its power to kind of kill Taga for like bastardizing his dreams, and kind of fights the corruption of the staff, and kind of saves the world and everything. Aang realizes that more than just the airbenders can kind of carry on the legacy of his culture, and then sends Taga off of that note to the spirit world. So he establishes that the Air Acolytes, starting with one of the reformed members of the Divide that he has saved from earlier, and at the end of, they kind of rediscovered a herd of endangered sky bison lingering around, making Appa not the last one, ending the movie. So that's pretty much my summary of everything and what I kind of remember. So I might misremember some things, or I might get some things. Yeah. So yeah. So I recommend definitely checking it out for yourself in case I missed something. But I would try to address it in some of my stuff. And like I kind of said earlier, this would definitely do pretty well against most animated movies that we have nowadays. This really could have been like really comparable to K-pop Demon Hunters, if they could, because I mean Avatar already has a loyal fan base anyways. And putting this on the big screen and stuff, oh yeah, this would definitely compete with K-pop Demon Hunters. And the movie was kind of like great, so make no mistake about it. But I gotta say, this is definitely like, if not probably one of the most biggest fumbles, marketing and promotion wise. Like, so bad. I have never seen like an L decision like this before since honestly Transformers 1. But maybe they can kind of turn this around at least this year with the animation designs of like Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legends of Korra. They never really missed, because Team Avatar, I mean, they look pretty damn good. Aang definitely looked like the swollest and the tallest, and on a vegetarian diet no less. Kind of reminds me of like Naruto and how he was kind of like the shortest kid in his class, but then like, when he got older and stuff, like he pretty much towers above everybody, and he got physically more toned too. So it's kind of ironic considering how, Aang and like Toph were like, physically the youngest characters on the team. So just think about that. But anyways, everyone else kind of looks like pretty much like runway models and had like long ass hair and everything. Of course, I mean, if you like watch the series, I mean, there were a lot of like references and background characters and whatnot making cameos in the movie, like kind of like the guy from Kyoshi Island, from episode 3, where he saw the Avatar. He's like, oh, the Avatar is back. The guy that was foaming at the mouth and everything. Seemed like he got married and he has a child and stuff, and he has another kid on the way. And him and his son, when they saw Aang and stuff pull up, they were like foaming from the mouth and stuff, so they were doing that little gag again. So yeah, that was pretty funny. And then of course you got the Cabbage Man. Of course, he made a cameo where he was like, they were doing that whole "my cabbages" bit and stuff. I kind of wish that they would have like kind of showed his company, Cabbage Corps and stuff, where like Legends of Korra kind of built a statue in his honor, like, because he was like the CEO and he established, like, he was the founder of Cabbage Corps. So I wish like, what if like in one of his buildings or something, like, somebody crashed into his building or whatever, all these cabbages or something came out of a factory, and he would be like, "my cabbages," I think that would have probably been a little bit better for me, but it is what it is. But we definitely got a chance to see Roku and the other avatars kind of speak to Aang, even though it's kind of a continuity error, if you were to ask me, because if you remember in the comics, like Aang kind of severed his connection to the avatars so that he wouldn't really talk to them anymore, because he felt like they were kind of misleading him with their advice. And I think that there was a cameo with like Suki and the Kyoshi warriors in the background. But it's kind of crazy how she kind of gets the short end of the stick in these type of stories, because this time they really could have like really added her a part of the group and everything. But like I said, that's such a missed opportunity, and I kind of wish that we would have gotten some acknowledgement about what happened to like Ozai and Azula, and maybe we could have gotten a cameo or a scene with Iroh and stuff. I'm not saying Iroh should have been a part of the adventure, because Iroh definitely would have been old by now, but and he should still be alive too, because Iroh, like he knew Bumi and Kaya, like Bumi, Kaya, and Tenzin, like before Iroh had passed away. Like Iroh, he used to be around when they were kids, but he passed away around when they were children and stuff. So yeah, at least where they can remember him. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying he should join the adventure because he's too old at that point, but still. It would have been nice to at least like get a scene with him or something like that. But you know how they are sometimes when it comes to like Iroh's voice and Mako, the voice actor and stuff. But mainly that just leaves a lot of. But the reason why I want Ozai and Azula to show up is because it just leaves a lot of open-ended questions and like Legends of Korra that I never really got like any kind of acknowledgement. So of course but I get it. It would take away from Legends of Korra if they were to like spend all that time trying to like talk about what happened to those characters and whatnot, or that's something that really could have gotten like more answers inside the comics, since we did see what happened with Azula and Ozai, where Ozai does kind of counsel Zuko a little bit or gives him some advice on being the Fire Lord sometimes. But I wonder like what really like happened to him. Like obviously he should be locked up still, but like has him and Zuko mended their relationship, or like what's up with that, or like with what became of Azula and stuff. Like I know she started like obviously she got out, she went crazier and stuff. She started some kind of organization or something like that was like some kind of rebellion against the Fire Nation or whatever, because they didn't like Zuko. Yeah, but I'm just saying like all that stuff, it would probably be nice to get some answers, like get some of that stuff like answered, but that's just me. The Ocean Spirit gets a scene helping Team Avatar as the Spirit Portal. So we kind of get an interesting scene where we see like Aang and Sokka get aged down to be like kids again. Zuko and Katara are turned elderly, kind of like their Legends of Korra cells. They even got the designs from Legends of Korra. And we kind of see Toph as a baby, which I think the baby Toph is probably a reference to that Avatar Chibi series that used to be on Nickelodeon a long time ago. Like there was like a little mini shorts kind of thing where like Avatar had a little chibi thing going, because Avatar is anime influence after all. So there was a little bit, that's probably a reference to that. And of course, this being said before Legends of Korra, a lot of the stuff kind of lines up, like the Equalists being kind of a modern day version of the Divide in Korra's era, the origin of like the Air Acolytes, you know, Tenzin's attendants at Air Temple Island and stuff, and you know their origin. The Sky Bison being found by Team Aang, and the statue of Aang in Republic City, possibly holding the staff of Sonma. I kind of forgot like to kind of also mention too that they also made a few jokes about Katara and Zuko being a couple in reference to those like fangirls and stuff who kept thinking that they'll end up together in the series and stuff. Like I even did a stream about that too, talking about that. Like this is probably like the third like time in the series that they've ever like, you know, that this is like seen happening, like when they've always joked about the Zutara thing and stuff. Because like I shit you not, like okay, when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid and I watched Avatar, I always knew that Aang was going to end up with like Katara regardless, you know, because they spent the most time around each other. Katara was like literally the girl that Aang had like saw when he first woke up, the first person or first woman that he had saw and stuff, and obviously he's been in love with her ever since and stuff, you know. So I mean, I never imagined like, oh yeah, Zuko and Katara was going to get together, you know. I mean, to be honest with you, I never even knew. Like Zuko's redemption was probably like the huge milestone for me because I've never seen a character get redeemed like that before until Zuko. But regardless, I never thought that Zuko and Katara would ever be a thing. But whenever I hear like girls online or, you know, even at my job sometimes when we talk about like, yeah, because I talked to some girls and stuff where they brought up Avatar and stuff, and they were like, I always thought Zuko and Katara would get together. I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. And obviously, I've seen the behind the scenes because I have the box set of Avatar and stuff, where like some of the creators, Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, I think they joked about it too and said that like, you know, like we keep getting so much mail about people talking about they wanted Zuko and Katara together, so they like to make jokes at that expense in the show. So remember that time when like I think this is definitely during like the last season and stuff, they definitely poked a lot of jokes about that, like when Zuko was gonna hire June to go find Aang and stuff, and then like June looked at Katara and stuff and was like, oh, is she your girlfriend? And Zuko and Katara were like, no, she's not my girlfriend, or he's not my boyfriend, like stop it. Or like that time at the play and stuff, that was definitely a huge reference right there where like you know, Zuko and Katara was like sitting next to each other and stuff, and Aang was like, oh, well, I kind of wanted to sit next to Katara. He's like, what? He's like, never mind. And then later on during the play and stuff, they do that joke where the play Zuko was like, I thought you were the Avatar's girl. And then the fake Katara was like, well, I love him like a brother. Then Zuko and Katara was like, trying to, like, it's like, nah, we're not like that. And Aang was like, yeah, that's right, she's the Avatar's girl. So that was pretty funny though, I ain't gonna lie to you. So you got a little bit of a reference to that too. So yeah, and Aang was like, no, they're not a thing, stop it. So you got some people that's complaining and stuff that actually saw the Legend of Aang and stuff, talking about some, oh no, but Toph is queer coded and stuff, she's gay, or she was supposed to be into women and stuff just because she's rowdy and she's tomboyish, even though she has two daughters and stuff from two different men who weren't really around like that, or how she kind of had a crush on like Sokka, and to some extent Zuko too. So I mean that just never made sense that like, you know, Toph will be into women and stuff.
Actually, it's me. Oh, well, you can go ahead and let me drown now.
Because throughout the movie, like, despite like Togga's prejudice, Toph was always like, you know, she was very into like Togga in that movie, bro. She was all over him. So that's just one of the highlights, is that there is no gay themes or anything like that, or anything trying to be politically correct. That's honestly something that like people kind of like got, you know, they kind of grew jaded on when it came to like Legends of Korra in the finale, and then the comics, and then the novels. So I'm here to kind of confirm or vouch that there's none of that there. This is just a solid, just, you know, solid, just straight up, just a decent movie, you know. Now, some people would probably try to say, oh, well, Zuko said in the movie, because if you watch the movie, Toph was like, you know, obviously because Toph is blind, she was like, I know he's good looking. Somebody confirm for me. And then, you know, everybody's like not really giving much of an answer. And then Zuko's like, well, he's pretty handsome. And everybody's like, they're looking at Zuko like, what? And Zuko was like, well, I mean, it's all in the bone structure. Like, you know, and that's not him being gay or anything crazy like that. That's just an admiration or just an observation, you know. Like, you can definitely like look at a person and just be like, oh, you know, they're pretty attractive or they're good looking and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that you have an attraction for them, you know. That just means that you can either admire them or be like, damn, how do I get my hair or my whatever to look like that, you know? But that doesn't mean like, oh yeah, Zuko was definitely nah, you know. And it's kind of like the same thing with like Bayonetta when you think about it in a way where, you know, you got people trying to be like, oh, Bayonetta's gay. No, she's not. Stop it. Bayonetta is into men. She's definitely into Luca and stuff. That's her main love interest. We all know it and stuff. It's not John. John is Bayonetta's best friend that's like a sister to her. So let's just stop the cap. It's the same thing with Toph, where Toph is definitely not into women, okay? She's mostly, for the most part, into men, okay? And Toph, like I pretty much figured in Legend of Korra, yeah, it kind of makes sense that Toph would be the type to kind of sleep around a lot, you know? But that's just me. A small nitpick that I do have is I kind of wish that Sokka kind of displayed more of his like swordsman skills, because when he's like fighting in this movie, it's mostly him just using his trusty boomerang and his inventions like his flying bike prototype, but no like actual sword skills or anything that we see like any kind of like improvement on or none of that, you know? Like, I kind of wish that like Sokka, because I know he lost his space sword in his original boomerang and like the finale when they were trying to like take down the ships and stuff, and Sokka was trying to save him and Suki and everything, and he like lost his like he dropped the yeah. But I wish he kind of like found it at some point or something, you know, and just, you know, we could see more of like Sokka's sword skills in this, and this probably would have been a perfect opportunity for that. But I mean, I will say like there was this kind of cool moment though where like Katara kind of turned like Sokka's boomerang into like this large ice-related kind of weapon to kind of hit Taga, so that was pretty cool too. And then on the subject of like power scaling, Katara did kind of have a cool scene where she did actually kind of like split the ocean in half, like she was off some Moses type stuff. Toph, she kind of used like some of her metal bending to kind of like make some kind of like cool anime looking body armor and stuff. Like she looked like something off of like Chainsaw Man or something. And I kind of wish that Zuko would kind of like display more of like skills and stuff, or more feats that kind of put him on the level, or if not higher than like his dad, his uncle, and his sister, since he's always kind of portrayed that he's like still kind of under Azula in the comics and stuff, despite having the status as Fire Lord. You know, you would think that, oh, you know, Zuko should be as powerful as like his dad used to be, at least when he gets older or something, right? And I know we kind of saw a little bit of that inside Legends of Korra, where he did have a fight with the Red Lotus and stuff, but Zuko was obviously in his 90s and stuff, so obviously he's not in his prime anymore, so we don't know what his real prime would have been like in his like 20s or 30s or whatever. So that's kind of a little bit of a letdown. And another thing too, I always kind of wish that like Zuko would like, you know, do lightning bending, because Zuko's never actually learned how to like lightning bend. Yeah, he knows how to like redirect lightning. He knows how to like, you know, how to counter it. So if he's fighting like Azula or something like that, he can just like, and Azula throws lightning at him, he can just like, oh, redirect it back at her and stuff, just like what he did with her or Ozai or whatever. But we've never actually seen like Zuko learn lightning bending itself. And then yet later on in like Legends of Korra, like they kind of revealed, even though I know lightning bending was more of a family kind of tradition within the royal status, but they kind of like made it a little bit more of an open, they made the secret more open and stuff. So now, you know, like workers and stuff can use it for like conduction and all that to kind of revolutionize things. So I did like that aspect of like Legends of Korra. Even like, you know, Mako knows how to lightning bend and stuff. But I think, yeah, they should have had Zuko learn lightning bending too. Like, you know, I'm just saying, you know, versus just the standard, oh, he knows how to redirect lightning, he just, oh, he shoots fire. So, yeah, they definitely could have improved on Zuko's skills in that regard. And there were some moments I was kind of just going to myself, like, you know, with Aang, like, I'm like, man, Aang should really be doing this with ease without, you know, like, when he's like, when in the beginning, like, a temple kind of fell on him and he was trying to save everybody and stuff, like, off some Superman type stuff from, like, Man of Steel, you know, when Superman was trying to save those people from, like, the oil tanker. Well, Aang basically was trying to save the Divided when he got into a fight with them and they were trying to retreat. He used his earthbending to try and stop the this temple from falling on everybody. So it's basically kind of like a large kind of building ish. And I'm like, man, Aang should be way more powerful than that. You don't need to go into the Avatar state. And I think even in the Avatar state, he was kind of struggling a bit just to hold it. I'm like, bruh, like literally Toph, a 12-year-old Toph was able to use earthbending to stop that library and stuff. And you saw the how big that library was. She can stop an entire library from sinking back into the spirit world and hold it up for at least like at least several minutes, you know? So I don't know how Aang in his avatar state is struggling just to do that. But I don't know, that was just like, wow. Oh man, Aang, you need to kind of work on some of your bending skills, bro. And I mean, I get it too, because I know Aang, after like the Fire Lord Ozai stuff, and I guess a couple of years in, after that, Aang has gotten, a little bit more stronger and stuff, but sometimes he just doesn't really I can kind of see where he doesn't go all the way, because even in, like Legends of Korra, they kind of admitted that Aang never learned metal bending. I'm like, wait, Aang never learned metal bending? So I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So yeah, and there's no contradictions with that here, because he still doesn't know metal bending or anything. But I'm just saying, like, damn, bro, you should at least have gotten way better or improved on your skills at the very least, you know? Or like when he was climbing up a mountain and stuff, and I'm like, he can literally just fly in his avatar state. Like, he can do that little wind bubble thing or whatever that he did when he was fighting Ozai. He can literally just fly up. He doesn't need to climb up a mountain and stuff in order to do that. But I don't know, that's just me though. But anyways, I'm just like, looking at Taga and stuff. Taga was doing things that I kind of expected Aang to be able to do at this point, like destroying mountains, crushing airships with his airbending alone. And again, this guy doesn't have an avatar state. He's not an avatar. He's just a standard bender that trained under an avatar. And he's doing feats that puts Aang to shame. I'm like, oh, that is crazy. But this is kind of like the strongest that we have actually seen Aang, where he does kind of get like a new form that kind of actually tops that kaiju form that he had back in like season 1, when he teamed up and he merged with the like ocean spirit, and he was doing all that crazy kaiju stuff when he was beating up the Fire Nation and all that stuff. Yeah, I think this new form that Aang got, because he gets a new form thanks to the staff of Sona, Aang becomes like very OP and stuff. He might actually be planet level now, or if not, maybe an argument can be made, maybe universe level, because Aang can channel the power of the spirit world with his staff and stuff. But let's not get too crazy. But still, he was whooping some ass in that final scene and stuff with that guy Taga and stuff. He was going real hard. But yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Speaking about Taga, there is one thing I do want to kind of talk about real quick, but Taga's airbending tattoos. So, in case you don't know, of course, the airbending tattoos is usually a sign whenever an airbender is considered to be a master. So, like Aang, he was the youngest airbender to become a master, and then later on his granddaughter, Jinora, has surpassed him and stuff, being the youngest at like the age of 11. And Tenzin also has the airbending tattoos as well, and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, so we know the traditional just blue plain tattoos and whatnot, right? And the movie sometimes alters this, where some characters might have like the Air Nation stuff a part of it and everything, to kind of make it a little bit overly designed. But it kind of works though. Like, I will say, like, that is something that is that's acceptable with the live action stuff, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie and the Netflix stuff, is that because it won't look like, it'll look a little silly or goofy if it was just a regular just plain tattoo that runs across the body and stuff. But it's kind of a nice touch though, I will say that. But what I wanted to get at is like Taga's tattoos though. His tattoos are a lot more warped and kind of like messed up compared to Aang's tattoos. And that's if you know your Avatar lore and stuff. In the lore, basically whenever an airbender has tattoos like that, that's usually a sign, meaning that they're probably like a criminal, or they're dangerous, or they were disowned from the Air Nation or something, pretty much. Like even like Kyoshi's mom, if you read the Kyoshi, the Rise of Kyoshi novels and stuff, Kyoshi, her mom, like, yes, Kyoshi is an earthbending avatar, or is from the Earth Nation on her dad's side, but on her mom's side, her mom used to be a former air nomad, and I think her tattoos were like described of being like she has the airbending tattoos being a master, but she was also a criminal too. So her tattoos are more like in the shape of snakes instead of like arrows and stuff like Aang's. So that's probably a little bit of a reference with Taga and stuff with his airbending tattoos. So that's just something I wanted to put out there. The voice acting was fine, but it's kind of weird how they didn't really even attempt to bring back like any of the old voice actors from the original series. Like, I mean, Toph and Aang, I get that their actors don't really have a huge body of work outside the series and stuff, so they're not like as professional as the others. But they couldn't just grab, I don't know, Dante Bosco, Mae Whitman, or Jack DeCina to kind of voice Zuko, Katara, and Sokka again. Like, I'm just saying, because they do actually have a huge body of work. Like, obviously, they've voiced other roles, like, I don't know, Dante Bosco, he voiced like American Dragon, you know, Jake Long and a few other stuff. Mae Whitman, she voiced April O'Neil from the 2012 series, and she's probably done other stuff outside of that. I just can't really think of it right now. And Jack DeCina, I think he has it kind of good, sort of, with Brian Conesco and Michael DiMartino, because he voiced Callum inside that Dragon Prince series. So I'm just saying, like, you couldn't have just brought those guys back and stuff to like voice those characters. But I guess this is probably because it's probably has something to do with that guy ProZD and stuff, that YouTuber, who's like also a voice actor and stuff, and then his ass was like kind of complaining about, we don't, like, we need more Asians to voice more Asian related characters and stuff like that. And I guess that might have been probably a little bit of the delayed with the movie and all that stuff as well, like part of the reason and stuff, which that kind of backfired on him too, because because he voices characters that aren't even Asian despite him being Asian and stuff. So yeah, thanks to his dumbass, I think he created this controversy in the first place, where pretty much now we have to cast based off of race and stuff. I think even Toph's voice actress I heard in this movie is voiced by a blind Asian girl, and I'm just like, what? Like, look, if I didn't Google that or hear that from somebody else and stuff, I wouldn't have guessed and stuff. Like, that is just, like, I don't know, pandering to the extreme. Because, look, when it comes to, like, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, when it comes to acting, yes, it makes sense to cast people that can physically look like the character. Okay, if you're in a live action movie or something like that, then yes, that makes sense. But when you're like, I don't know, like casting for like voice actors and stuff, the skin tone should probably be like the least of your concern, because obviously they're not physically going to be like portraying the character and stuff, they're just providing the voice. So I don't get why that's such a, like, I don't know. But I guess everyone wants to find accents and stuff like that to be like, oh, it's offensive or whatever and stuff like that, so I don't know. And before I go, one last thing I wanted to talk about was I actually like the sand-bending avatar that Aang was talking to kind of get the information about Sona and everything. I thought he was pretty cool and stuff. Like, basically, he's a sand-bending avatar, pretty much, where he's able to control sand and everything. Like, he's awesome Gara type stuff. Because, sand is a sub-ability of Earth, and obviously this avatar is from the Earth Nation and whatnot. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, seeing him do all that stuff. But anyways, but pretty much he was like a short little old man and stuff, and he was trailing on to Aang and stuff, talking about, oh, is sandals still a thing in your era? Oh god, I hate sandals. I hate how sand can get in, and so on and so forth and all that. And Aang is like, oh god, I really want to move on and stop talking to this guy. But yeah, so that was pretty nice though. I liked that that part. I thought that was pretty creative. Because yeah, sand is such an underutilized ability in the Avatar universe that not even Toph, who's like the self-proclaimed best earthbender, is like, sand bending's not exactly like her forte. But she obviously gets better at like utilizing it in like season 3, where she can make like a detailed version of like Bossing Say as like a sandcastle and stuff when they were playing on the beach and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But we haven't but it's not as expanded on compared to like metal bending, lava bending, or like blood bending or anything like that. But it definitely does show this power level of this avatar who's able to like manipulate sand to like such a crazy degree. So I thought that was pretty cool. But for the most part, I think this was a pretty good movie, and I think any like fan of Avatar can really enjoy it and stuff for the most part. What else can I say? I mean, I know a lot of people aren't fans of, like, let's say Legend of Korra. The games aren't really good. The comics, people don't really read that like that, to be honest. And I highly doubt a lot of people really read the novels and stuff like that too. So yeah, but I think if you watch Avatar: The Last Airbender and stuff, and you watch Avatar: Legend of Aang, I think you can easily like kind of like sit down and really like consume this and be like, okay, I actually enjoyed it, or I thought it was pretty good and stuff, you know. And like it really felt like, okay, this is pretty good and stuff. No crazy woke stuff or whatever. You know how they keep trying to do that inside Avatar here and there and stuff like that. Yeah, none of that here, in my opinion. I definitely would recommend checking out the movie if you're able to, or check it out in theaters or whatever whenever they release it, or streaming or whatever. I don't know, but I don't know. That's all in Paramount though. But yeah, obviously I kind of watched it as soon as I could just to see what all the buzz is about. And yeah, it's pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie. All right, but anyways, I'm out. Peace, and until we meet again.